Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So, in recent years, particularly this first half of 2023, there's been a lot said about uh, the increasing presence of Black protagonists and more Black representation in Brazil's ever popular novellas, or what we call soap operas. Historically, this is a big thing because Black characters and actors, actresses have always been portrayed in, tried and true stereotypes. They've always been relegated to like the background of the novella, just stereotypes, maids, drivers, bodyguards, gangsters, thugs, all of the typical stereotypes that have just been part of Brazilian mainstream television for years. As I've said oftentimes they just throw these Black characters in there just like sidekicks or something. They're not really part of the plot, an important part of the plot. They oftentimes are not shown in a family setting. A lot can be said about the way Black Brazilians are presented in these novellas. I often reference the book and the documentary by one of Brazil's top Black directors, Joel Zito Araújo. He did his dissertation on the image of Black Brazilians in Brazil's popular telenovelas. Okay. This was a blueprint. This was a his work has been so often cited over the years because soap operas in Brazil, or what they call again novellas, they're so popular. Everyone watches them, and you just have to ask, what is the influence of seeing these novellas and how they portray the country, but also how they portray Black people. Psychologically, I'd say Brazil has been at war with the psyche of Afro-Brazilians, for 5 centuries. It was a clear plan, at least parting from the time when slavery was coming to an end, when they said we got to get rid of some of these Black and brown people. So they started promoting the idea of mixture, so that they hoped that within 3 to 4 generations, all the Black people in Brazil would disappear. It didn't happen, but this promotion led to one of the biggest, how can we say, mixed country in the world. As I said, and I'll continue to say, most Brazilians are mixed to some degree or whatever. It's just that some of them look a little white, mostly white. Some of them look mostly Black, and some of them are just in the middle where you just can't define them. And there's also those of indigenous ancestry. So, what is it that we get from these novellas? What is the message when you see how Black Brazilians are treated or how they're portrayed in these novellas that everyone watches, right? So this piece is from 2015. It's titled How Brazil Soap Operas Maintain the Passive Image of Afro-Brazilians While Avoiding a Real Discussion about Racism. Okay, so let's just get into this piece today. This is a scene from the novella at the time called Babylonia. It was a scene featuring the characters Julia and Regina. Okay, I'm going to come back to that in a minute because somebody was really struck by a particular scene in this novella. Let me just get into it so you understand what I'm getting at and understand that, as novellas are so popular, it just asked a question of, some people will look at novellas and say, well, this is just fiction. Films are just fiction, but oftentimes in media presentations, they're passing on sometimes a covert, sometimes an overt message. I remember a lady said to me about 20 years ago, she's like, "Oh, that's just television. It's false. That stuff doesn't really happen." And so then people don't often realize the power of, visual depictions. It's what can you say? How can we say that going to a film, for example, and seeing that in that enormous screen that you're looking at, with the dramatic music and all of the angles of the camera, and then those words, people will have dreams about these films. They'll have nightmares about these films. what influence do these images have on the psyche, even in your subconscious? Think about that question as I go through this article. So it's an old complaint from organizations of the Movimento Negro, or Brazil's black rights organizations. The Brazilian media and global TV, in particular, Brazil's long-running top television network, most powerful media outlet in the country, it often creates weak, passive, and stereotypical characters of Afro-Brazilians in its productions. The list of problematic Black characters is too long to list here, but here are just a few that have been featured on this blog. We've seen Black characters in the series Sex e as Negas, which basically you can translate as Sex and the Black Women, or Sex and the Negresses, however I can translate that. And in Familia, both from 2014, they seem to need white people to come to their rescue to protect and stand up for them in moments in which they've been confronted by racism. Okay. In 2009, the novella Viver a Vida was celebrated by many because actress Thais Araújo became the first Black actress to be featured as a protagonist in a primetime novella. Again, Thais Araújo, who I consider to be the country's top Black actress, she's been on, I'd say on top of uh, this list of Afro-Brazilian actresses. I say she's been on top for at least a decade, 15 or 20 years. So this celebration, the character that she played in this novella was named Helena, and this is a character that a lot of Brazilians are familiar with, but the character has always been played by a white woman. Thais Araújo once spoke about how she thought portraying Helena would be the end of her career because she was getting so many complaints from people who rejected seeing a Black woman playing Helena. Okay, so this celebration was brought into question when Araújo's character was shown falling to her knees and receiving a vicious slap in the face by a white character. Okay, so I want to go through this a little bit. So in this scene that you're watching, you see Thais Araújo fall to her knees. She's asking, begging the forgiveness of this woman whose daughter was in a car accident, and now she's like a paraplegic. And the Helena character is, she's blamed for the accident that led to the woman's daughter, having this terrible car accident. So the crazy thing about it is Thais Araújo was celebrated. Let me see if I can find one of the articles here. In this novella, Thais Araújo was celebrated as the first Black Helena. Again, this is a character that's often usually played by white women. Okay. So in this piece, this it's like an academic piece was talking about, this was chapter 55 where this happened, and it shows the Black Helena fall to her knees and get a slap in the face by a white woman. And this was in the middle of, I don't think it happened on the day of Black Consciousness, which is November 20th, but it definitely happened in November, which is Brazil's Black Consciousness Month. It's kind of similar to, Black History Month in the United States. So is it all just a coincidence that they celebrated Thais Araújo as the first Black Helena, the first Black woman on a primetime novella, and here she is falling on her knees and getting slapped by this white woman in a very just notorious scene? So, what is the message there? Is it coincidence that she gets slapped like this? Being all of the accolades that Thais Araújo has gotten, she's the first Black actress to do this, to do that, the first Black Helena, the first Black woman in a primetime novella, and here she's shown falling to her knees in front of this white woman and getting slapped across the face. What is the symbolism there? Okay. Let me get back into, because this is what I want to show in this particular article, is that this humiliation of Black characters and Black actors, actresses, there's probably hundreds of clips that I could show. Let me talk about one from 1994 where we saw perhaps the worst example of these passive characters. In the novella of the time, Patria Minha, there was a scene in which a white boss went into a rage, wrongly accusing his Black gardener, Kennedy, played by actor Alexandre Moreno, of stealing jewelry. In a scene of more than 6 minutes, we see the Pellegrini character played by actor Tarcisio Meida aggressively scream at the black youth, grab him, and insult him. Black bastard, insolent black. You all, if you don't shit when you come in, you shit when you leave. The white boss screams as he terrorizes his young employee. Now, this phrase right here, if you don't shit when you come in, then you shit when you leave, that's a popular Brazilian phrase that they say about black people. They say the black person, if he doesn't make a mess when he comes into a place, he makes a mess on his way out. Ask anybody in Brazil, everybody is familiar with that phrase. So this is the scene from that novella. And as the scene is about 6 minutes, I'm not going to show the whole thing, just the last part there. You can just look at this guy, just it's complete humiliation to me. This scene was so terrible. It set off alarms in the black activist communities. They filed a complaint against this scene, right? Among a host of other insults, Pellegrini also tells Kennedy that he isn't capable of learning anything. And worst of all, the look on the face of the Kennedy character is of absolute fear and horror. The character doesn't react, doesn't defend himself. It's a very problematic interaction considering the position of blacks in Brazilian society and a 350-year relationship between the white master and his black slave that in many ways hasn't changed much even today. Black organizations such as the Geladeas, the Black Women's Institute of Sao Paulo, went to courts claiming that the novella spurred racial prejudice. Other groups sent protest letters to the network and the press. It was a pretty ugly scene. If the clip, you can find the clip on YouTube. Actually, it's like 6 minutes long of this white character humiliating his black, help. Actually, okay. But though that's not all of them. There's plenty. Like I said, you could dig into Brazil's media history and just see just all types of scenes where they make the black person just seem like he's subservient. The how it seems that the role of master and slave hasn't changed much in Brazilian society even today. So let's look at a couple more clips. Let me see, what else do we have here? Okay, now these next two scenes I'm going to show you are from a novella that's called A Escrava Isora, right? So, it's pretty much self-explanatory. You see, first one black woman and then another black woman, being, tied up and whipped during the slave era. We go on a little bit further and we see this image of this iron mask being put on a female slave. Now, this character this is from a novella called Anastasia. Okay. It's the Anastasia character is, some people say it's a fictional character. Some people say it has historical background, but this is what you see this man, strapping to this woman's face. From what I understand, this was used to stop slaves from eating dirt or ingesting dirt so that they could, it was a form of people committing suicide during the slave era. So then you have, here's another one. This is from a slave era film or novella. This is from 2016. It was called Liberdade, Liberdade. And what's happening here is that the white woman slaps her mukama in the face. A mukama is like a wet nurse. She's enslaved. And the black slave threatens to share the fact that she saw the woman's bloody sheets, basically saying she's no longer a virgin. And she said she was going to spread this, she was going to, she was tell what she knew. And so here's another one that people really, black Brazilians just had they had a fit when they saw this. Okay, this is from a kid's novella. It's called Carrossel. I think it was on the SBT television network. And this is a remake of a couple. I think the original novella had its origin, I think, in Argentina, and then they had a version of Mexico, and finally Brazil recreated it using Brazilian actors. And the black kid in this particular scene, he's infatuated with this little white girl. I think her name is Maria Joaquim. His character is named Cirilo. And throughout this novella, this young white girl just humiliates him time after time after time. He's always caught fawning over this girl. So in this scene, you see him bringing flowers to her, talking about, you're beautiful. Look at the look in her face when she looks at him. She rises, she takes the flowers out of his hand and just begins to crush, to just destroy the flowers. throw him to the floor. And then just, look at the look on his face as the scene ends. It's like it looks like his self-esteem has been completely devastated. So these are just a few scenes. I mean, like I said, if I was to really do some research, these are just some scenes that have made headlines. But if I was to do some serious digging into Brazil's, media's, television networks, and in the films, you see this type of stuff all the time, and it's just kind of accepted as normal. So again, what is it? What are they trying to say by having these types of scenes, these depictions of Black characters in these novella that millions of people watch every day? Okay. It is with this history that we must keep in mind as we consider the latest offering in the form of a global TV novella. The question we must ask here would be, are the soap operas and TV series indoctrinating Afro-Brazilians to accept a passive role in relation to white people, or is it simply a portrayal of the real aggressor-victim historical relationship between whites and blacks? Although these views don't reflect the full history, Afro-Brazilians have long been stereotyped as passive, cordial, subservient, irrational, and dependent. Oh, you see those two sources there, one from 2009, 1999. So one must wonder what message Global is trying to divulge, knowing full well how influential images are on its audience. Of course, there will be those who will argue that these types of situations unfortunately exist in the real world, and as such, they should be shown. But sometimes the detriment of such portrayals outweigh the necessity of authenticity. And as we've seen in numerous protests, a rising Afro-Brazilian activism is questioning, protesting, and outright rejecting such depictions of their experience, which brings us to today's piece. So I'm going to end this right here because I really only wanted to focus on this particular, these clips. Like I said, if I was to do some more digging, these are just a few scenes from a few of, some of these depictions of Afro-Brazilian characters and actors and actresses over the years. Like I said, there's plenty more where that came from, but I wanted to use this to introduce the next part of the video. I decided to cut these two sections of this article into two different videos. So this is the introduction here. Stay tuned for part two because I'm going to delve a little bit further and sew this together into another pivotal scene in another novella. That again, it asks the question of how Afro-Brazilians are depicted on television and what message it sends to the Brazilian population in the context of a 350-year experiment with human bondage, where one race was considered superior to the other. And in the minds of many Brazilians, this hierarchy of race still continues, with white Brazilians on top and Black Brazilians on the bottom. So anyway, let me know what you thought about this video. Definitely drop a few comments here. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you watch more than a few videos here. Also, share this video, like this video, click on the notification bell so that, you'll be notified when I put up another video. And with that said, I'm going to end the video here and ask that you come back for the next one.